I used to believe that once you bought a home of your own, you had finally stepped into adulthood, into safety even. A home was supposed to be a fortress, a symbol that I had carved out a place in the world that belonged only to me. I never imagined that the people who raised me, the ones who should have celebrated my independence, would see it as an opportunity to take everything I had worked for. The day I closed on my little craftsman cottage in the suburbs felt like victory. After years of saving, scrimping, and saying no to vacations and luxuries, I finally had the keys in my hand. The room smelled faintly of paint and sawdust. I took pictures of the sunlight pouring across the hardwood floors, sent a few to a close friend, and promised myself that this place would be sacred, untouchable. That illusion shattered less than a week later. It started on an ordinary Tuesday. I stopped at the grocery store after work, humming to myself as I carried 2 paper bags up the front steps. When I opened the door, the sight inside made my grip loosen, sending a jar of marinara sauce crashing to the tile. Red spread across the floor like blood, but I couldn't move. My mother and older brother were standing in my living room. I hadn't given either of them my address. Surprise! Mom's voice was cheerful, but her hands were busy pulling my armchair away from the wall, testing out different layouts. My brother Caleb was in the hallway with a tape measure, calling out dimensions. My throat went dry. "What are you doing here?" Caleb barely glanced up, checking if the bedrooms will work for the kids. "You've got great space here." The words sank in slowly, as if my brain refused to process them. Bedrooms, kids, space. "This is my house," I managed, my voice hoarse. Mom waved her hand, dismissing me like I was being dramatic. "Don't be selfish, honey. Family makes things work for everyone. Caleb's place is bursting at the seams with 3 children, and you have all this space. It's just logical." My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. "How did you even get inside?" "I made a copy of your key," Mom said, as if she were admitting to borrowing sugar. "You left your purse on the counter the day you invited me over for a tour. I slipped the key out and had it duplicated." "Don't make that face," I had to. "You'd never think practically about this otherwise." Her tone was so casual, so entitled, that for a moment I wondered if I was the crazy one. Maybe all families did this. Maybe I was overreacting. But then Caleb's voice broke through that haze. "The kids already picked out their rooms," he said. "Ellie wants the one with the bay window. The boys will share the one across the hall. You can keep the smaller room as an office, I guess." He spoke as though the house were already his, as though I had somehow become a guest. The realization hit me like ice water. They hadn't just shown up on a whim. This was planned. "You need to leave," I said, my voice trembling. "Right now." Mom blinked at me, as though I'd spoken in another language. "Why are you being so hostile? We're trying to help. You don't need all this space for yourself. Think of your niece and nephews. Think of family." That word, family, had been used against me my entire life. Family was why I gave up the bigger bedroom as a child so Caleb could have it. Family was why I paid rent through college while my brother's tuition and apartment were handed to him. Family was the reason I was always expected to give, while Caleb was always expected to receive. But this was different. This was theft dressed up as duty. "I'm calling the police," I said, louder this time. For the first time, Caleb's expression shifted. His eyes narrowed, his mouth tightening into a scowl. Mom's voice dropped into a wounded whisper. "After everything we've done for you, after the sacrifices we made raising you, this is how you repay us. By threatening your own family." The guilt came rushing back, as heavy and suffocating as ever. That old familiar weight pressing on my chest. But beneath it, something new flickered, anger. Pointed to the door. 2 minutes. Get out. They left, slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. I slid the deadbolt in place and sank to the floor, shaking, surrounded by the smell of tomatoes and garlic from the shattered jar. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. The next day, I found a Facebook post Caleb's wife had written 3 weeks earlier, before I even closed on the house. A smiling photo of the kids crammed into one bedroom captioned, "So excited for our new place soon. Kids finally get the space they deserve. Blessed." The comments were full of congratulations. One asked, "Which room does Ellie get?" My sister-in-law replied, "The blue one with the bay window. Perfect for her." My stomach twisted as I scrolled further. They had been planning to move into my home before I even bought it. That night my father called. His voice was thunderous. "Your mother is in tears. You're tearing this family apart with your selfishness. Caleb's children need stability. Are you really going to hoard a 3-bedroom house all for yourself?" I tried to argue, but every word I spoke was drowned by his shouting. "Family helps family, Madison. You know that. Don't make me ashamed of you." Shame, obligation, guilt. They knew exactly which weapons to use. By the end of the call, my hands were shaking so badly I dropped the phone. I stared at the family portrait on my shelf. Mom, Dad, Caleb with his wife and kids in the center, and me on the edge, smiling that strained smile I'd worn my whole life. For the first time, I didn't see love. I saw exploitation. I flipped the frame face down. But flipping a picture didn't solve the problem, because the next evening I got a text from Dad. "Dinner at 7. We found a solution. Don't be late." Against my better judgment I went. Some small, desperate part of me still hoped they'd come to their senses, that maybe they'd apologize, admit they were wrong. Instead, I found Mom, Dad, Caleb, and his wife seated together on one side of the table, an empty chair waiting for me on the other. A manila folder lay in the center. Dad slid it across. "We found some larger properties nearby. 5 bedrooms, plenty of space for everyone. Your bank says transferring your mortgage should be no problem." My chest went cold. "You contacted my bank." "Just preliminary discussions," Mom said breezily. "No need to make a fuss. This is the sensible path forward. Family under one roof." My sister-in-law leaned in, her voice syrupy. "Of course, not all your furniture will fit. But we can sell it, make room for the kids' bunk beds. The garage. Caleb needs one side for his truck, if you don't mind parking on the street." I looked from face to face. They weren't asking me. They were telling me. My entire life, they had counted on my silence, my compliance, my fear of being seen as selfish. But something inside me had cracked the moment I found them in my home. I set my napkin on the table. "No." The word hung in the air like a gunshot. Dad's face darkened. "Refusing would show you don't care about this family. Think about your niece and nephews," Mom pleaded. "What kind of aunt turns her back on children?" The old guilt rose again, threatening to choke me. But then I remembered the Facebook post. The plans they'd made behind my back. The way Caleb had already assigned bedrooms in my house. Understood. My voice was steady. "Watch me not help." And with that, I walked out, their protests and accusations following me into the night. As I drove back to my cottage, my home, I knew the war was only beginning. The drive home from that dinner was one of the longest of my life. My phone buzzed non-stop. Texts from Mom, voicemails from Dad, a string of guilt-laden messages from Caleb's wife. I didn't answer any of them. The night pressed against my windshield like a heavy curtain, and for the first time in years, I let myself imagine a life completely separate from them. But the problem with drawing boundaries is that people who have always benefited from crossing them don't respect the new rules. The next morning, I discovered just how far they were willing to go. I was sipping my coffee when my phone pinged with a Facebook notification. Caleb's wife had posted a photo of their kids crammed onto a pull-out sofa, their faces arranged in exaggerated pouts. The caption read, "When family turns their back, children suffer. Family first. Unless you're selfish, apparently." The comments were a flood of sympathy. Church friends offered prayers. Old neighbors scolded young people today for forgetting their roots. My third-grade teacher even chimed in. I raised 4 kids in a house half that size. Madison has plenty of room to share. I set the phone down, my hands trembling with anger. This wasn't just a family argument anymore. This was a campaign. A narrative carefully designed to paint me as the villain. The doorbell rang that afternoon. Through the peephole, I saw Pastor Allen from our church, Bible tucked under his arm. My chest tightened. Course. Madison. His voice was gentle but firm when I cracked the door. Your family is worried. They say you've hardened your heart. I came to pray with you. I didn't ask for that, I said quickly. Sometimes God sends help whether we ask or not. My jaw clenched. Then tell God thank you, but I'm not available. I shut the door before he could answer. For the first time I didn't feel guilty. Felt furious. That night, I sat at my dining table and began making a list. Every violation, every manipulation, every unwanted intrusion. The Facebook posts, copied keys, the phone calls to my bank. If they wanted to treat this like a war, I would fight like a soldier, with evidence, not excuses. By the end of the week, the list had grown thick enough to fill a folder, and not a moment too soon. Because the following Monday, I came home to find Caleb's SUV parked in my driveway. Through the window, I saw shadows moving inside my living room. My stomach dropped. I didn't go inside. I didn't scream or plead or cry. I pulled out my phone and dialed the police. By the time the officer arrived, my parents and Caleb were on the porch, faces twisted with outrage. She's throwing her own family onto the street, Mom wailed. We were just visiting. With what key? I asked, my voice calm as I showed the officer my security camera footage. The officer turned to them, unimpressed. Ma'am, sir, this is trespassing. Consider this a warning. Next time we press charges. Neighbors peered from behind curtains, watching the drama unfold. For once, the shame wasn't mine. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept deeply. But peace never lasts long with my family. 3 days later, my friend Dave, an attorney, helped me draft a cease and desist letter. They've weaponized guilt your whole life, he said, adjusting his glasses. Time to give them something stronger than guilt to think about. Delivering that letter was harder than I expected. My mother looked at me with eyes brimming with hurt as I handed her the envelope. You'll regret this, she whispered. But I didn't. For 3 blessed days, silence reigned. No calls, no Facebook attacks, no surprise visits. I almost dared to believe it was over. Then they escalated. At work, my receptionist called me out to the lobby. My parents were there, claiming Caleb had been in an accident and they needed me urgently. Cold dread washed through me, until my phone buzzed with a text from Caleb himself complaining about his son's soccer practice. They had lied. Again. Security escorted them out, but not before Dad shouted across the lobby. The whole town knows you abandoned your family. Everyone's talking. I went back to my desk shaking, humiliated in front of coworkers who had done nothing but support me. And that was when it clicked. I had been trying to defend myself against their narrative, to prove I wasn't selfish, to cling to the hope that maybe, deep down, they loved me. But the truth was simpler, sharper. Love doesn't look like exploitation. Love doesn't break into your house, smear your name, or sabotage your life. I didn't owe them explanations. I owed myself peace. So I fortified my boundaries like walls around a castle. I changed every password, redirected my mail, installed new locks and cameras. I documented every unwanted contact. I shared the situation with HR at work, so no one would fall for another family emergency scam. And slowly, something shifted inside me. No stopped feeling like betrayal. This doesn't work for me, rolled off my tongue without apology. My coworkers rallied around me. Neighbors who had seen the police incident offered quiet nods of solidarity. Even strangers online began questioning the dramatic posts once I stopped engaging. Caleb's wife eventually deleted her most outrageous updates after people asked why her children were always photographed in my living room. My family didn't disappear. They still tried. Letters in the mail, voicemails dripping with guilt, sudden appearances at places they knew I frequented. But each attempt only added to my folder of evidence, which by then could have filled a small filing cabinet. And each time I said no, I grew stronger. The final straw came on a rainy Thursday evening. I arrived home to find my mother standing on my porch, fumbling with a new key she must have had cut. My doorbell camera captured her trying 3 different versions, her face tight with frustration when none worked. Watching that footage later, I felt something unexpected. Not anger, not fear, but clarity. They would never change. But I had. The next morning, Dave filed the paperwork for a restraining order. When the order was served, my father called one last time. His voice thick with rage. "You'll die alone, Madison. No one turns their back on family and survives." I listened to the silence that followed. The absence of his voice once I hung up. For the first time, it didn't sound like loss. Sounded like freedom. Weeks passed. The harassment slowed, then stopped. My mother occasionally tried to send letters through neighbors or church friends, but they ended up unread in the trash. Caleb's wife blocked me online after her smear campaign backfired. And slowly, my house began to feel like what I'd dreamed it would be all along, mine. Sometimes when I water the flowers in the front yard, I still see the neighbors peeking through curtains. I know they talk. I know some of them probably believe the story my family spun. But the difference now is, I don't care. For years, I measured my worth by their approval. I twisted myself into knots trying to be the daughter, sister, aunt they wanted. And all it brought me was exploitation. Now my worth is measured by something else entirely. The quiet peace of a locked door, the soft hum of my own decisions filling my house, the knowledge that I don't have to give away pieces of myself to earn a love that was never real. Revenge doesn't always look like fire and fury. Sometimes revenge is silence. It's a deadbolt clicking shut. It's the absence of your presence at their dinner table. It's finally, blessedly, living without them.